Welcome to the Red Man Group Live at 21 Summit 2022 of Orlando, Florida, celebrating 16 years of 21 Studios and 21 Convention Live events. This episode, the final episode of 21 Summit 2022, the final show of our entire event. It's called The State of Women. Earlier today, we did one on the state of masculinity, basically the state of men in America and throughout the West. And now we're going to talk about the state of women, the state of femininity. We actually have an entire convention that kind of inspired this episode called the 22 Convention to make women great again. And in many ways, that's the purpose of this episode, to help make women great again, make women the greatest they have ever been. So before we get further into the episode, I want to kind of go down the panel, get a basic introduction for the people here and the people on the video years from now. Who are you and what are you about? What are you about?
My name is Zan Perion. I'm Canadian. And I wrote a book called The Alabaster Girl, and I'm here on this panel, I believe, because I really love women, and I have my whole life.
My name is Jeff Younger. I'm from the great state of Texas. I'm a father of two boys, and I've been fighting to stop one of my sons from being transitioned to a girl by the family courts.
I'm Anthony Johnson, Anthony the Dream Johnson. I'm the founder of 21 Summit, 21 Studios, 21 Convention, the Patriarch Convention, the 22 Convention, the Red Man Group, and 10,000 other things on the internet or in real life sometimes. I love what I do. I think women are pretty awesome, pretty dope. I have a girlfriend, a couple sisters, love women a lot. And I'm gonna make them all great again by the millions.
My name is Alexander Juan Antonio Cortez, popularly known as AJAC online. I'm a husband, father, personal trainer, writer, and I've become known for many things in this man's sphere that we have, relative to self-improvement. But I've always gotten along well with the opposite sex, with women, so hopefully we can have a constructive conversation. Jennifer?
My name is Jennifer Molesky. I am a wife and mother and hobbyist YouTuber, and I like women too. I guess it depends on the individual woman though. I don't like all of them, but I want to support you in making women great yet again.
A woman.
What's that?
I said a woman.
A woman.
Get a woman of that.
Oh, Jesus. All right, that's great. It's very clever.
That's great.
So I want to start with AJ, Mr. Ajax here,
Okay.
Alexander Cortez. AJ, even before Make Women Great Again, you were known for writing tweets that were very provocative and entertaining and educational for women, including how to be a beautiful woman.
Yes.
And about 50 million women, as I understand it, loved this tweet thread. Talk to me about how to be a beautiful woman and what happened when you wrote that tweet that reached so many millions of lovely women.
So that was an interesting experience. So the original tweet was basically 12 steps how to be a beautiful woman. You want to be fit, thin, pretty, attractive, feminine, like men, listen to men, dress well, be hygienic, cook, clean, be graceful. I think something along those lines. I can't remember all of them. And funny enough, I stole that tweet from somebody else I forget who it was, but they wrote a list of 12 things women don't need to be. And I found it preposterous. And I just riffed it and did the opposite direction. 12 things women need to be beautiful. And it blew up. It got 100 million impressions. It got 14,000 comments on it. Yeah. And what was fascinating to me was that this is a very generic list. You're basically describing a basic female, XX chromosome. And it caused a firestorm. And I got death threats. I got girls telling me that I should go kill myself, castrate myself. You're an incel, women hate you.
Baby dick.
You should fucking die. Yeah, it's always the same insults. And I also had a bunch of women sending me pictures asking me to rate them of, am I beautiful? Like, do you think I'm beautiful? Am I an 8? Am I a 9? Am I a 7? Like, are you single? So it was really mixed reactions. But yeah, like, what was this signal of, I guess, on like a meta level? Is that gender polarity has been dissolved the past decade. We're not allowed to differentiate anymore between the opposite sex. We can't even say opposite sex anymore. Are there sexes? Apparently there's 96 genders, 500 genders. We don't know. You can be poly, furry, sexual, cat sexual, masculine, presenting, female. I even know. It's a word salad. It's this utter confusion. And it's affected the dating market. It's affected the fuck rate. Men and women aren't fucking anymore. If you look at statistics, so we often talk about like the rise of incels, right? Like there's a whole segment of men, somewhere around 24% of the population, I'm not bullshitting this, but 24% of men are no longer having sex under the age of around like 40. So young guys, ages 20 to 40, 1 in 4 of them are not having sex. You know, it's a big deal, right? It's like, Jesus, we have all this incel problem. Look at women's statistics. About 18, 19, 20% of women are no longer having sex. We have the rise of femcells now. So we have roughly 1.4 to 1.5% of the population, 25% of the population, who are just, they're not fucking, they're not going to reproduce. And we have a declining birth rate. So we can talk about certainly the segment of the population that are these women who are fucking whores, only sluts, all these things, and the giga chads, the guys who are just laying down pipe and they're fucking everybody. But that's in reality, it's a small segment. That's not 60% of the population. That's maybe 5, 10%. The majority of the population, men, women, they're just not interacting with each other. They don't know how to anymore. A woman can't even be beautiful because, you know, by my own list, if you're to be thin, pretty, graceful, that's not what a woman is. A woman is, I don't know, it's something else, right? This anger, rage, confusion. Men don't know how to be men. So that list, what made an impact, it made me realize that not even the dating market, like the sexual marketplace, the fuck it rate marketplace, it's fucked. It needs to change. Hopefully that answered the question, right? Was that the question? Yeah. I actually don't know what the question was.
No, you nailed it.
Okay.
In some way, somehow, it was awesome. I was enjoying this a whole lot. Yeah. Jeff, I want to move to you. You're quite a bit older than I think, except you're and Zan are about the same age. So maybe we can have this for both of you.
Okay.
The others over here were quite a bit younger. What have you two observed about the fuck marketplace, as AJ put it, or the sexual marketplace? What have you seen change in the West, in America, and in Canada over your lifetime since you were young? When I'm sure it was a lot different when you were in high school, 15, 16 years old, compared to what we see now, where we see prostitution on the internet being normalized for millions of women and sugar baby lifestyles in college campuses. UCF in Orlando is a sugar baby capital of the world, if you didn't know that. So right down the street.
Wow.
So what have you seen, first Jeff and then Zan, change in the sexual marketplace during your lifetime?
The most obvious symptom was a complete decline of modesty, right? You know, I even go into churches now and I'm looking at butt creases on women, the skirts are so short, and there's just a complete decline in female modesty. You know, if I was asked what an attractive woman is, it would be a woman who's chaste and obedient. That's an attractive woman. That's a woman that will be attractive to many men, and many men will be willing to put his protection over a chaste and obedient woman. And I just ask you, where on earth will you find a chaste and obedient woman today? It's very difficult to find. Both the chastity has declined, right? It's almost non-existent, which is why we have your slogan, "Make women virgins again."
Yes, yes.
Women are in a profound state of disobedience. You know, for example, sassy is a compliment that women give one another, but sassy means impudent and rude. But that's become a virtue. So what's happened, I think, to really precipitate the decline in people who don't, is they just simply find people who are not in any way attractive as a man to provide protection for. And so young men just started checking out, and what happened was 20% of the men just started getting all the pussy. And 80% of the men, look at any college campus, that's how it works, right? And it has nothing to do with men protecting women or helping women or being part of women's lives. It's purely a transactional form of prostitution. And that's become the norm.
Zan, you focus a lot more on beauty, so I'm curious about this from your perspective, that perspective and any other you'd like to provide. You're 58 now?
58,
So you've seen a lot in your lifetime in this.
No, we are the same age.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, getting up there.
Have you seen beauty decline in women in your lifetime?
You know, I really have been thinking about this a lot, what's changed in 20 years, you know, because I've been doing this a lot, been in a lot of stages, and what has changed? What's interesting, and I was just talking to Jason about this earlier, and the thought occurred to me, and that, you know, we had this cultural shift on Earth that I was part of. This thing called the seduction community that arose 20 years ago. And it had a much bigger impact on the culture around the world than we think, because it was hidden and nobody admits it. But I was on a conference call with some crypto wizard guys and entrepreneurs and Silicon Valley type guys, and they said, yeah, in my college days, I was all over it. So, and I'd go to Warsaw back in the day, and 300 guys in the audience that don't speak a word of English, but they wanted to be part of it too. They're like, it had a bigger thing, and why? Why did this come upon the earth? Because well, there's lots of things we can say. I mean, we had this 100 years of feminist equality movement. The idea was equality. It was called equality, and that was the goal, equality. And all these years later, we don't have equality, we have sameness. It's blended together, and I've been preaching about polarity for 20 years and talking about how the feminine grace is missing, and we're starved for it. And the masculine grace is missing, and we're starved for it. You know, masculinity is not toxic, it's absent. And the true feminine grace in its power is an equal thing. It's just, it's polarity though. It's not the same thing. And what's interesting, when I was talking to Jason about, because that pickup artist movement blanketed the earth, and it was a big cultural phenomenon that affected an entire generation. And what happened was, guys realized that it didn't work. You know, I didn't get my supermodel in bed in 3 easy moves. You know, and I didn't get that, and so there's an anger in the men. But more than that, what's interesting, what I see 20 years later, is a loss of hope, because the seduction community, the pickup artist movement, gave men some exuberant thing. I can follow an algorithm. I can get a girl in bed, and I can seduce girls, and I can do this if I follow the algorithm, and gave this blanket of men this profound hope, and there was a lot of excitement and exuberance, and there's layers in every city, if you recall, and everybody came together and they're celebrating because we finally have an answer for men. But the answer was misguided. It was manipulation and went down this wrong path, right? It was, and it didn't work. And so now it's disappeared, and there's a lack of hope in the hearts of young men. And that's why we have things like this new word incel, because there's no hope for the men. So the message that I've been trying to say, what you guys are trying to say, is that there is hope, and there is a way forward, and and masculinity is beautiful, and needed and necessary, and feminine grace is beautiful and needed and necessary. So that's my long-winded answer.
A woman.
A woman. I like how many use that. I'll credit you. Don't worry.
I stole it. It was used in the U.S. Congress, I think, late last year, like in December.
Yes.
Actually, someone said amen, and then someone said a woman, a woman.
That's
and they
cool.
actually meant it, and I've just never forgotten that. And it was a news cycle for a couple of days, but I love that. Every time Michael Foster calls me, I'm like, hey, woman, brother, how you doing?
That's
Kills
hilarious.
him. Jennifer, let's move on to you.
Okay.
Based on what Zan just said, masculinity is beautiful. That's not a term, that's not a statement you often hear almost anywhere, even in the manosphere.
No, I don't think I've ever heard it.
Yeah.
Like
How do you
that?
feel about that? Is masculinity beautiful to you? You're married. Is your husband's masculinity beautiful to you?
No,
is that
but
how you feel?
I wouldn't call it beautiful, but it is. I think men are so awesome. I've always had admiration for men. They just move and operate differently than women. Even their like hanging out is just like different than than women. And women are like more bondy, and we talk, and I love that. I mean, because I'm a woman and that's how I communicate. But I like to watch men operate in the world, and I think women appreciate men, but they have been told that they're not supposed to because they can do it too. But I can open a jar, but my husband does it better. I can protect myself from an intruder, but my husband is more equipped. He has a natural ability that I don't possess. Yes, I could go and learn how to do that thing, but I'm not made for that, and I don't want to be that. So I appreciate what the opposite sex, what a good man, what they provide to society. I wouldn't call it beautiful, but it's not because it's a not. I would choose an equally wonderful adjective, but I wouldn't say beautiful, but needed and.
You mentioned early on in the statement an admiration for men. In your own view as a woman, do you feel that admiration for men is central to being a woman, to femininity?
Yes, I guess. I think I do. Once you admire and you can see someone for what they were built for, and they're doing it, and they're doing a good job of it, you easily slide into what your role is. I have found more, I have settled into who I naturally am more so since in the past 5 years than, I mean, I'm 44, so it took quite a long time to find my natural habitat where I really feel more like myself. And I only do that, I am only that because I am the opposite and I work with my husband. But it's without him, he completes me. But really he does. You know, I get to be comfortable and safe and do the things that he's not wanting to do or not. It's not his role. Yeah, I hate when I'm not articulate, and this is that moment right now.
You get to embrace being a woman.
Yes.
You're doing great.
Yeah. AJ, I want to move to you. I think you'll have a good insight on this. You have been observing and involved with and tweeting and provoking the manosphere for several years, much like myself, in your own unique way. But in particular on Twitter, right? In the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of women get more involved in the manosphere. I think on the panel earlier today, there was someone talking about that. I'm not sure which speaker it was. So it used to be almost zero involvement of women in the manosphere, and there's a lot more of that these days. From a content creator perspective, and then even from like a common manospherian type perspective, if you want to call it that. What do you make of that, and where do you see that going? Is that the invasion of women in the manosphere? Is it a useful thing? Is it kind of a mixture of both? What are your thoughts on that?
I would frame it this way. So I was telling Zahn this and Jennifer this before we started filming. So if we look at masculine and femininity as two properties, they're the opposite of each other. Yeah, we could use a yin-yang kind of example. You have hardness, you have softness. Yeah, you have penetration, you have a womb. You have beauty, you have roughness. So like it's opposition. Like there's a contrast. And women always, whether they subconsciously acknowledge it or not, they take their cues from men. Even the stereotypes that we have today of like the boss queen, boss bitch, boss girl, it's essentially a woman trying to replicate being a man who's a leader, but she's doing an inferior job. You know, a lot of the qualities that women have today that we often criticize were like they're bossy, they're brassy, they're disobedient, this antagonistic kind of attitude. It's a woman imitating playing a male asshole. But whereas a man can be an effective asshole and still be liked, women trying to be an effective asshole, you're just a bitch. Like no one actually likes you. Like it makes for a contentious life. But going back to that framing, so you have masculinity and femininity. And I noticed this was around 10 years ago when I was personal training, I was training women. And I remember hearing constant complaints from my female clients about just how hard dating was. And they can't find a man, capital M. There just doesn't seem to be that many men left. And at the same time, I was young, I was going out, and I was noticing just myself, there's not that many guys really approaching women. There was already that reticence, there was the betification of men, where like the sexual marketplace was already becoming more split. And then I encountered the manosphere, years later, and I realized like, okay, like the seduction community, there was this segment of the men where they realized like, you know what, something's gone wrong. We need to maybe improve our skills in a misguided way, but like we need to improve ourselves. We need to improve ourselves. We need to be better equipped if we're going to have any success in the world. So you have the manosphere rise. It's male self-improvement. And then women at the same time, they've been hurting this whole time. Like women live in their own world. Like we like to think, this is very male-centric, right? Like we oftentimes think of women as just sort of evolving or revolving around us. They have their own sphere that they exist in that's separate from us, and women have their own sufferings, their own complaints, their own pains. But women, without men to guide them, they aren't going to take any cue. There was no female self-improvement sphere. But then finally you start having the manosphere grow, and girls see this, young women see this, they're like, oh, like guys, like men have realized that something's gone wrong. So it's not just me, I'm not just crazy. And they start forming their kind of own community. And it's going through its own evolution right now of whatever you want to call it. Girls trying to be traditional or trying to be feminine or femme, trad, con, whatever.
Trad wives.
Yeah, and it's going to be silly and it's going to go through various permutations and there'll be things to make fun of. But overall, I think it's a positive thing. For all the guys, especially the manosphere who always bitch constantly about there's no good girls left. I always make jokes about this. Where like you have to go to the good girl church where the good girls are. which doesn't actually exist. But anyway, but you know, so all the guys who complain that like they can't find good women in quotes, well, you know what? There are good women, and they've come together. So you can probably talk to them. You know, maybe you'll find a wife, and then you can increase the fuck rate.
Yeah. I really like this.
We need to emphasize this. Okay, y'all are gonna remember this. You need to increase the fuck rate. How are you gonna save the West if you're not fucking and reproducing? Really? Now, how are you gonna do that? All this bitching constantly. I've heard this for years from guys. I'm black-pilled. Oh God, we're on decline. I just keep fucking consuming negativity. Okay, how do you change the world effectively? You fucking become a man. You become a leader. You have a woman follow you, and you have children. And you reproduce and you teach what you want to see in the world. You're not gonna fucking do that bitching about how you can't get laid and it's not even worth getting laid because there's no good girls left. Go fuck yourself.
Increase the fuck rate. Go
Increase
fuck
the fuck
yourself.
rate. So, that's the problem. You need to stop fucking yourself and go actually fuck a woman.
There we go.
A woman. I love this last point, though, and I've talked about this at the convention a little bit as well, that in the manosphere forever, there's been, almost forever anyway, bitching and moaning about no good women, there's no good women here, no good women left, you're seeing like black pill. And yeah, if that, there might be some truth to that, right? That's not a complaint out of nowhere, but it's like if you're not gonna fucking do anything about it, you don't have a lot of room to bitch. If what you're saying is true, if you believe it, and if that's accurate to reality, you can't fucking do nothing about it. This is why I make women great again, right? That's why you make some tweets sometimes that inspire women to do a little better, even if they get butthurt in the meantime. It's necessary. You can't have great women without mansplaining, without men teaching them how to be great women. It's at least one of the main necessary components for women to be great, to be good women. And yeah, if you can't, you're not going to do anything about it, action. You're very much about action, Jeff.
Yes.
Men have to take action. And that starts at least with speaking. At least a woman have an alternative option of what to do.
You have to at least be able to tell the truth to women.
Yeah.
If you don't have the balls to tell them the truth, then
Yeah.
you're not going to have any success at all. One of the reasons I think we're seeing more women show up to these events is, it's a phenomenon that I've noted many times. In a crisis, apartment building catches on fire, or a train gets stopped in the subway and the lights go out, whatever. The most rabid lesbian feminist starts twisting her pigtails and becomes a traditional woman to be saved, okay? Suddenly, they deserve all the protection that men have. They're not the ones picking up the slack, I think a lot of women perceive a society in crisis and are rethinking where they want to be in that crisis, right? And part of that is perception, part of it's reality. One of the interesting things about female hypergamy is that the more successful that a woman gets, the smaller her mating pool. The more successful a man gets, the much larger his mating pool. So we have an asymmetry, right? And as women have become more and more successful in our society, largely due to laws and other things that advantage them, they become more and more successful, they can't marry up. They can't find men to marry up. And women marry up and men marry down. So they perceive a crisis, and they go looking for a way to solve it in a very instinctive way, which is to get men to solve their problem, which is what women generally do and require. And we're only too happy to oblige by returning us to patriarchy.
Yeah. Restoring the patriarchy. One man at a time, one house
One
at a
man
time.
at a time.
What's interesting is I've been doing coaching and programs for many years for men, and women always say to me, do you do this for women too? Do you attract for women or this kind of thing? And no, I don't, because number one, it's not my place. But number two, you don't need to coach the women. That's my take. You need to coach the men.
That's right.
And because the women will reflect the men of the society. So you concentrate on the men, and there's a reflection going to happen. And that's why we have this discord right now, because men are not men today. And they don't have any, there's nothing for women to grab onto. There's no gravitas in modern men. So they're playing both roles. I'm gonna be the feminine part and the masculine part, because where's the men?
Yeah.
And the men are saying, like you said earlier, men are saying, where's the women? And we give up. We're not having sex anymore. We're not going into this world. And women are concentrating on the things on the fringes like this. So women today, true beauty is rare, but it exists in women. Women are are not beautiful, they're beautified nowadays.
Right.
With, body renovations and all this kind of stuff, right? They're beautified.
Filters and stuff.
Yeah. And so we're starved for true feminine grace, and we're starved for true masculine grace, and that's what I've been saying all this time.
One additional thing, because you brought up something interesting. So I watch feminist movies, so you don't have to. And I watched one called Tango, and it had an excellent conflict in it. In tango and other classical dances, men lead the fucking dance. There is no classical dance where women lead, period, right? And it's actually one of the hardest things when you go to a dance studio and say you want to learn how to do the salsa or something. The hardest thing is they have to have older women in the dance studio to tell the younger women that they can't lead the dance. And many of them walk out. They can't suborn themselves. So in this feminist movie, Tango, this becomes the focus of a conflict between a feminist who loves a tango dancer who looks amazingly like you. And
He's a ballet guy.
yeah, he's a ballet guy. And she can't let herself be led by this man. And the compromise at the end of the movie, this metaphorical compromise becomes she lets him lead her, but she sings the music into his ear. And they come to a compromise sort of in that way, right? And it shows this feminist notion that the woman wants to control even the rhythms of the dance, right? Men have to just simply say, and I've had to tell many women this in dancing, you cannot lead. Your job is to be a moldable device, and if the dance goes well, all the credit will go to you. If it goes badly, it goes to me. Since I'm responsible, you have to do what I tell you to do, or we can't dance. But it's funny how in this simple physical act, you find that the disobedience of women, the inability of women to submit to a man, even on the simple thing, is so hard that women will walk out after paying for lessons.
Yeah. I've seen women walk out of the 22 convention, not this year, but last year and the year before. A couple women, not a lot, we're talking like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 last year. They got so irate, usually with Coach Greg Adams. Occasionally someone else would inspire a walkout. But he in particular is the champion of getting women to walk out. One woman I walked down the hallway and I caught her walking out and I was able to talk her back into going.
Okay.
I got a little Zan Perrion in me to seduce these women. but some of them I couldn't save. They just walk and I'm like, lost cause, hopeless, goodbye.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of disobedience. I want to shift gears a little bit to a concept I made to start a little debate on the panel here.
Okay.
So, and it revolves around the issues of accountability and responsibility. Do women have agency? Do they have accountability? Is it just, I think Zan hit the nail on the head that there's a reciprocal relationship between men and women in our culture right now. That sounds like common sense, but sincerely, men are mostly a bunch of beta losers at this point, and women then are a bunch of degenerate skanks. And this behavior shifted, like AJ said, into the bell curve. There's a huge chunk of women that are nothing, that are a fraction of the quality woman that their grandmother and great-grandmother was.
Yes.
Their great-grandmother could cook a huge dinner, they can't even boil an egg, literally. So my question to the panel is, it revolves around slut makers and a self-made slut. A self-made slut, like a self-made millionaire, it's a concept they created in 2021. Because I had certain tradcons, traditional conservatives, they like to accuse men and pickup artists universally, not in like a specified case, of being slut makers and this kind of thing. And I get on a surface level why they would say this, right? You go out, you have sex with 150 women, you're a slut maker. In my own experience of women in the dating marketplace, a lot of the girls that I ended up hooking up with in Orlando and around Florida, these girls had notch counts 30, 40, 50 deep, and I was number 37. So it's like, if this girl, by conventional standards, is a promiscuous, loose woman, how am I responsible for that? Am I a slut maker if this girl already had sex with 37 men? Which one of those men made her a slut? Maybe one guy broke her heart, but really the common denominator is her. Maybe her father was obviously failed her and her mother, but so I guess the question of the panel is, are sluts self-made or are men slut makers? What is the relationship between these two things and women's agency and responsibility for their own life in our current climate, in our current environment? Open to the panel.
I think they're both. I mean, we can't just say that. I mean, if a woman has sex with 150 guys, that's 150 slut makers, and the woman is obviously responsible for spreading her legs that many times. But it's like, okay, so who's the guy that had sex with the tranny?
This is important.
I got his name.
This is important.
His name is John Tranny Lifestyles.
John Tranny Lifestyles. So it could be the same argument. He had sex with a tranny.
Several, actually.
Several?
Yeah.
Fine.
He enjoyed it.
He's admitted it in writing, by the way. In legal
Fine.
documents.
Okay, so he had sex with 100 trannies. He enjoyed it. It was great. But he is saying, listen, they're beautiful to me, and if I don't have sex with them, someone will. Yes, that's fine. But if I don't do it, someone else will. So if the logic is,
I'm looking for the logic.
Keep going. Keep going.
if the logic is that it's the only person that's responsible. It takes two to have sex. I mean, if it's not just, if there's no slut makers and it's just the slut itself, then there's no tranny fuckers. There's just the tranny itself.
Okay, so
Wow.
Holy shit.
I want to add some context. Clearly,
I didn't think that anyone would clap.
Please add context.
Clearly, there are some men who are at the upper end of kind of sociopathic behavior.
Yeah.
They knock up women on purpose, and
Yeah,
then
I've seen it.
they run away. I've heard of local law enforcement having to deal with some of these guys that have knocked up so many girls that cause so many problems with childless, these single mothers and stuff. It's just wild. So you have men who are extremely broken and damaged. That guy is probably an example of that. That's not all men, that's not most men, but there's some men, and I think that's always been the case.
Yeah.
It's like sexually criminal activity, but not legally. So yeah, I mean,
Well,
there's
it's like
some
what
men who
degree
are.
of degeneracy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me try to address
Yeah,
it
go
this
ahead.
way. So your question.
Yeah.
The police basically don't prosecute women for engaging in prostitution. They basically go after the pimp. They put the pimp in jail, right? So what we have here, what you're talking about, is a woman who's self-pimping. She's her own pimp. So she's as responsible as any pimp that we put in jail for prostitution, right? And do we prosecute the Johns? Absolutely, we prosecute the Johns, right? But not as much as the pimp, right? So the self-pimp slut, did I just create a new manosphere concept?
Yes.
The self-pimped slut is more responsible for her own body and her own sluttiness than the Johns that she uses for her own gratification.
Okay.
And that's a principle of law that we respect everywhere.
Let me take a social perspective of this.
Okay.
This is like, is it one or the other? I've always wondered, who leads sexuality, sexual norms? And if you go back throughout history, like you were saying yesterday, prostitution is the oldest business in the world.
Yeah.
So there's always been a segment of women that probably willingly have been prostituting themselves. Maybe they're hypersexual. They can do that job. I'm sure it has its damages, as all things do,
Right.
being in that industry, but they'll do it. Yeah, and throughout most of history, up until we get to the 20th century, even if we have sexually more liberal societies, there's still this kind of expectation that you keep it on the down low. People still get married relatively young. Human beings have sex drive. Is it realistic to expect a woman to never have sex until she gets married when she's 29? I don't think so. It's not realistic. The same thing for men. It's not realistic. But we finally arrived at the 20th century, and we have the pill, right? We have the pill, and suddenly we remove consequence from sex.
Right?
And the consequence of birth, of conceiving a child, that was a real consequence that warns men and
Yes.
women off of sex. Like it is, because you have 9 months that you're knocked up and you need to be physically protected. And now I'm responsible, or hypothetically anyway, for a child. Yeah, and most men, even guys who are very sexually active, if you have a kid, it's like, okay, I had a kid, shit, do you want money? Now I have something that's gonna, I have this consequence to deal with. I'm probably gonna be put on, have to go up to bat for it at some point. I can't just ignore it. Or maybe you can, but that's pretty sociopathic. But we have the pill, okay? So now, pregnancy is just not happening anymore. We can fuck, oh, nothing bad's gonna happen, great. And women are obviously really into this, and there's a whole bunch of propaganda, and whether it's authentic propaganda, whether it's manufactured, whether it's communist, Marxist, whatever, there's all this propaganda that sex is good, we should all be fucking all the time, and we do that. We do that for 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. We do it for about 50 years. But then we find out that, you know what, removing the consequences of sex entirely and allowing women to fuck each other, men and women to fuck each other indiscriminately, it does weird things to the sexual marketplace, right? We incentivize whorish behavior on both ends, and people start getting married less, they start reproducing less. It creates this culture of selfishness, and then sex itself becomes like it becomes a right. I have a right to sexually enjoy myself. Like that's my new human right as a woman. Like I should be allowed to sexually enjoy myself and not get judged for it. I also. So now there's no consequences to behavior at all. But men again go along with this because men like to fuck, right? It's like I get to fuck as many women as possible. I'm not gonna get pregnant. Yes, fucking great.
Right.
Yeah, but then 50 years later, we're like, shit, this actually turned out really bad. You know, why? For all the things we just talked about. We took all the polarity out of the marketplace between men and women. We're fucking confused now. It's a tranny fuckfest shit show massacre. Nobody knows and understands anything more about biology. It's fucking madness. It's absolute madness if you actually try to logically even try to understand it. It's just constant cognitive dissonance that this is actually believed and people are propagating this and going along with it, trying to forcibly transition children. Yeah, I was watching a video yesterday on Twitter of two fucking dudes who I guess are woman trannies, and one guy had a fucking beard, but he's dressed like a girl, and they're talking about makeup. We're literally living like hell and heaven are layered on top of each other upon earth, and like hell is winning right now. Like we are in hell. That is absolute chaos. Evil is chaotic and confusing. That is evil. But if I had to blame one thing, I would say the pill kind of did it. We decided to play God and take control of our own biology and suffer for nothing, for none of our choices, and look where it got us.
I concur. I think the pill was absolutely detrimental to the society, to the
And the
world.
Catholics, the Orthodox Christians, they were right.
Yes.
Interfering with reproduction, removing God's plan for us, removing that God-given order, they were right. You know, all the jokes that got made about Christians and the criticisms towards religion, you know, way back so many years ago, like the Catholic Church, they don't believe in birth control. Can you believe that? That's horrible. Well, those countries that are still predominantly Christian, they're having children, they have functional societies, they don't have fucking trannies trying to fuck kids. What do we got?
We have men that can get pregnant. I want to open this up to questions soon. So if you guys have questions like previous panels, you can go to the microphone.
Sex was the gift that God gave was the ability to create life. And you can only do that through sex. And then we bastardized it and removed the core, the creative, like the glory that it is supposed to be. And we just took it away with the pill. And now that creative glory of making a child is aborted now because you want to go to school and there's so many things you want to do and it's just going to screw up your education.
Well, it goes back kind of what I was saying with rights, where the greatest gift throughout human history, like the greatest gift that does exist is that you can have a child, you can conceive life,
Yes.
Life can literally come from you.
It's crazy.
But for the modern woman, the greatest gift is that she can kill.
Yeah.
You have supplanted God. So your greatest right, the thing that is foremost in your mind, that is the ultimate power, is that I can end life at any time that I choose. I deserve to have that. So murder has become what you worship. Like you need to have that control.
And I think it's important to point out that when men kill children in the womb, in the state of Texas at least, we give them a death penalty. We kill them by lethal injection. Women are allowed to do something freely by right that men get the death penalty for, which is probably one of the greatest examples of asymmetries in treatment of the law between men and women that exists.
Well, it's very religious what women are doing. They're sacrificing their own children, you know, and that's what they used to throw them in volcanoes, and now they have them sucked out of them. It's the same thing. It's very religious, and they're very religious to the state. Women, typically.
And it also, I think this discussion also points out something that other writers have called, have tried to solve by something called archaeofuturism. And it's the idea of how do you preserve traditional social structures in a world of technological change that alters the social incentives in these profound ways. And I prefer the term paleofuturism, right? Because it takes us a little further back. And in a paleofuturist world, the question will be, given modern technologies of reproduction and sexuality, virtual reality, artificially intelligent girlfriends, and all these things that are being bought and actually being sold in large numbers today. In a world of this disordered sexuality, how do we preserve paleo social structures that are good for us? And so the solution that I don't have, I call paleofuturism. Yeah.
I like it.
Zan, before we go to the questions, do you have thoughts on the original question that I proposed 10 minutes ago? It's been pretty fun back and forth here.
Not really. I'm listening to everybody, and I'm learning some new terms that I haven't heard before.
So do you have a question?
Yeah. So just to kind of throw a bit of a curveball and encourage a rigorous understanding of the opposition, in any of your versions of an ideal world, would there be any aspects of modern social change when it comes to women and feminism you would support or keep? And if so, what would they be?
I hate feminism with a passion. I want to completely abolish it, like all of it. I want it gone from society completely. So what will we keep out of that? You'd have to do a deep dive on what women in America, at least, were experiencing in like in 1800s. So I know things are not perfect. Maybe some domestic violence laws, changes like that. Those are far from perfect today. Those are heavily biased against men. False accusations can go very far in ruining a man's life in that area. So you have to be more of a history buff, I think, to dig through that. But by far, 99% of what feminism has, I think, fought for has been absolute garbage. It's been a lie at every step. They've hidden behind a lot of slogans and manipulations and propaganda that have been super effective. Like, they're excellent PR and marketers and stuff. But by far, it's just extremely toxic. I think feminism is the most toxic hate and supremacist movement alive in America today, and it has complete domination over the culture.
Agreed.
There's nothing that I would hold on to from feminism. I can't think of anything. Maybe if anyone would like to holler a right or something that
What about access to education? That's the only thing I think of.
You know, I think we live in such a, well, and it would depend on what my husband would want, but the access to education is so antiquated. No, education is so antiquated anyway. I always say if the founding fathers of university were to be resurrected and have a week pass to hang out, they would say, what the hell are you still doing with university? You mean you can get your information from a phone for free? Or there's, I created a meetup years ago, and the amount of information that I learned just from having highly intellectual people come together voluntarily to discuss things, I think education is harmful anyway. And yeah, you know what? I'll change no, women should not have access to education. At least in the sense of it is now, all you're doing is I always tell people here, let me save you $100,000. Repeat 100,000 times men are bad. And that's about all you're gonna learn in school. That's what they're pumping out, is to hate men, hate Western society, change the names of everything, get rid of statues. And I don't want to spend any money to educate anyone to do that. And women are more emotional, so they fall for it a little bit more, although men are falling for it, hence the manosphere has to come and save the day.
To the audience member who just proposed this, though, you mentioned, you can go to the mic. You mentioned access to education. It also brings to mind access to work, women entering the workplace. Mm-hmm. I think by far that's just been a huge disaster. And so should there be legal mechanisms to completely stop women from pursuing work at all? Probably not. I'm not in favor of using the government to use tyrannical force, but women entering the workplace independent of that issue, I think has been a disaster. It's atrocious. You can't even, a man can no longer even support, because there's so many workers in the workplace that a man can't even support a family on his own. Mm-hmm. And then you just have two parents that, if they're even together and having a family, right? If they're not men getting pregnant or some shit. They can't even go out into the world and earn enough money to keep their family afloat. And then the kids, no one's at home to take care of the kids, and no one's at home to take care of the home and the family and everything else. It's just that whole women entering the workplace has been nothing but a shit show, 100%.
I can't believe I'm actually going to argue for this one part. because I'm not pro-feminism at all, but some of the Russian women or Eastern European women I've met, they came from a culture that actually promoted technical education so they could survive the remnants, what happened in communism. And in my experience with the ones at least that have come to America, that they're actually particularly feminine and submissive and traditional. So I don't know, I hadn't thought about it more before that question was brought up, but that's the one part that I don't know if I'd want to deny someone the ability to support themselves.
This is a big question because I found this interesting. I saw this it was on Twitter, it was on like a few sort of like a tradcon female accounts I follow, or just whatever you want to call it, women's self-improvement, where they were posting something along the lines of realizing that the push for women in the workplace 100 years ago was just to create more taxpayers.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, and it was interesting, and that's not a new point that's been made maybe at Manosphere, but it was like the sort of girls realizing this for the first time, wait, if men work and women work, it's just sort of more money for the government, it's more for the IRS. Was this really about empowering me? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. Yeah, but I mean, to sort of deconstruct society, you have to consider that substructurally, modern capitalism is built on just both sexes working. It's incentivized. Feminism has been incentivized. Women, if you look at the statistics for university education, higher education, there's more women getting educated today than men.
Yes.
Men are failing by a lot.
By a lot.
Yeah, women have outperformed men. Women got everything they wanted more. You got all of it. So now it's just nitpicking that, in the field of theoretical physics, how come there's not more women of color? Or just some bullshit where, you can't find anything wrong anymore. And then if you look at, let's say, this is generic, the Nordic countries. So you have places like, Sweden, Norway, where they have a lot of social services for women. You got 4 months of paid time off if you give birth. You have, free childcare. You have all these things available to you that make life for women very comfortable. Their job distribution skews hard towards a male-female mix of women picking basically traditional girl jobs and men picking masculine jobs. So even when they try to level the economic playing field, but this is a small country, homogeneous population, higher IQ. Even when they did all of that, they just found out that people follow biology. So is there a sweet spot where you could?
I guess my point is, I've read those studies or read about those studies. It's just a question of, do you hold people back? Do you restrict them? I studied engineering, so I was in a class of 100 people and there was 5 girls. Yeah. But they weren't restricted from being there. And they weren't restricted from employing, and I think half of them got married before they graduated. So, but it's one of those things, when we start talking about dialing back feminism, where does it stop? Because even before feminist movement, women could own property, because part of me would like to take away the vote and take away the property rights, but that's not where it wasn't where we were before it started either. So I don't think it's so clear.
If I can add something to...
You need to change what the culture values, not to interrupt you, Anthony, but just if I'd make that really simple, change what the culture values. Does your culture value work, or does it value family? If I just make it, I'm being reductionist, to make it really simple.
Yeah.
If your culture values family, if that's first for you, we can agree that culture is built on strong families, it's built on people having children, then that's going to incentivize our behavior to get married younger, to have children, to have kids, to orient ourselves towards making that happen, and our values will probably array themselves as such. If our culture is only oriented towards work and material success and how much money you make, you have no incentive to make the world better in the future. It's just about the now and the present.
Yeah, I think if the culture still valued family, a lot of the issues would go away.
Absolutely.
Without any sort of force, which I think is what I saw in those Eastern European and Russian women. That's just my impression.
I want to add something to this real quick. I understand what you're asking, what you're saying here, and I'm generally with you. I'm very averse to using political force unless it's necessary and proper to prevent women from even going to engineering school, right? You might have a couple in there that really want to do it. It's a real passion. They want to do it, whatever, right? So I'm very averse to using the government to stop them from doing that. The question is what happens over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, when a couple generations go by? Is there a slippery slope? These Christians, like A.J. Cortez was talking about, would warn about this stuff when I was a kid in the 90s and even earlier before that, before I was born. This is going to happen, that's going to happen. They're going to get this. They're going to get gay marriage, and they're going to go after the kids, and their tranny fuckers are going to fuck kids. And well, guess what's happening? They're chopping tits and balls off kids, in America. So there's slippery slopes that are really hard to see in the future, and trying to predict things multiple generations down the line is extremely difficult. So I don't know if there's a perfect answer, and sometimes you just have to kind of wing it as a society.
I think AJ hit the main point, is that it's got to be, what are we promoting?
Yeah, that too.
I mean, right, what we value is what we got. Like, we're in this mess because we don't value family as a core, as a country.
No, go ahead.
Jeff?
Well, I, for one, will be the one on the panel who will stand up for authoritarianism. I'm opposed to all forms of liberalism, left liberalism, free market liberalism, classical liberalism, libertarian liberalism, any form of liberalism. And the reason I say that is because the only thing that matters is the moral quality of the authority. That's true if you're in a democracy, an aristocracy, a monarch. If the moral quality of the authority is good and you have terrible laws, they won't be misused against you. If you have really good laws and you have an awful authority, the good laws will be used against you. All that matters is the moral status of the authority. And I think it's quite proper for a community to set social norms, standards and social norms for the behavior of its members. And it's perfectly just for government to determine what those ends are. And historically, all governments have prioritized the creation of new citizens and new members of the community, and in fact have oriented the entire public sphere so that it is conducive to families and the raising and rearing of young. A private sphere was allowed and was even fostered in some cases for other activities which are not appropriate for families and children. But I think it's perfectly appropriate for the authorities in government to create a safe space in public for children and for mothers to raise their children.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Guys, we got to wrap up real quick to go down the panel. Where can people find you on the internet and learn more about you?
I'm at zanperion.com if you want a copy of my book. I sign them and send them free in the mail to you. You just cover the shipping, alabastergirl.com.
Jeff?
You can find me at my Substack, jeffyounger.substack.com. There you'll find long-form pieces, mainly railing against the Enlightenment and figuring out how we can make this compromise between traditional society and technology.
You can find me on YouTube at 21 Studios. Find me on the App Store, search 21 University. Find me on Twitter at Beach Muscles. Find me on Instagram at Beach Muscles 65. And pretty much just search Beach Muscles on Google. You'll pull up all my accounts.
So obviously you can find me on Twitter, AJA_Cortez. Just look for AJAC. You can find me on Instagram, same handle. Also find me on the website, cortez.site, and the newsletter, which is where I go into subjects in depth and can talk without getting myself banned off the internet. And obviously you can find me here as well with all you gentlemen and ladies. So.
YouTube, Jennifer Molesky. That's the only place that I'd like to send people.
Okay. That's it for this episode of the Red Man Group, and that's it for 21 Summit 2022. Thank you, boys.
It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off from a break off from the weak minds. They can stay soft. You can change lives. You create thoughts. Never waste time. You got